The night the flowers were delivered to the wrong hotel room was the same night two lonely lives quietly collided, one belonging to a struggling single father who had nothing but love to give, and the other to a billionaire who had everything except someone who truly cared. It was raining that evening, the kind of rain that made the city lights blur into soft halos against the wet pavement. Daniel Carter rode his old bicycle through the storm, a plastic bag tied carefully around a bouquet of white lilies so the petals wouldn't be ruined. The rain soaked through his thin jacket, but he kept pedaling. Deliveries meant money, and money meant food, rent, and medicine for his little daughter waiting at home. Daniel had once dreamed of a different life. Years ago, he had been a promising architecture student with big ambitions. But dreams have a way of collapsing when reality hits hard. His wife had fallen ill shortly after their daughter Lily was born. The medical bills swallowed everything they owned. When she passed away, Daniel was left with a newborn child, crushing debt, and a world that suddenly felt too heavy to carry. Still, he carried it. Every morning he woke before sunrise, packed Lily's small lunch, walked her to school, and then spent the day delivering flowers across the city for a small flower shop that barely paid enough to survive. But Daniel never complained. Lily's laughter was enough to remind him why he kept going. On this particular night, his last delivery was to the Grand Monarch Hotel, the most luxurious building in the entire city. The address written on the small card said Room 1708. The sender's name was unfamiliar, and the message simply read, "For someone who deserves beauty." Daniel entered the towering hotel lobby, dripping rainwater onto the polished marble floor. The chandeliers glittered overhead like stars trapped in glass. People in expensive suits walked past him without a second glance. To them, he was invisible. The receptionist barely looked up as he asked for directions. Moments later, Daniel stepped into the silent elevator and pressed the button for the 17th floor. As the doors slid closed, he glanced at the lilies again, making sure they were still perfect. Delivering flowers was more than just a job to him. He believed that every bouquet carried a piece of someone's heart. If you believe that small acts of kindness can change lives, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs a little hope today, and subscribe to the channel for more heartfelt stories. Your support helps these stories reach more people. When the elevator opened, the hallway was quiet and softly lit. Daniel checked the number again. Room 1708. He walked down the long carpeted corridor and knocked gently. No answer. He waited a moment, then knocked again. The door slowly opened. Standing there was a tall man in his early 40s, wearing a simple black shirt. His expression was calm, but his eyes carried the kind of loneliness that no wealth could hide. This man was Alexander Reed, one of the youngest billionaires in the country and the mysterious owner of a global technology empire. But Daniel didn't know that. Daniel simply smiled politely and held out the bouquet. The man looked confused. The room number had been written incorrectly. The flowers were meant for someone else. Daniel realized the mistake immediately and apologized, explaining that he must have been given the wrong room. He turned slightly, preparing to leave. But something stopped Alexander Reed. Perhaps it was the sight of the drenched delivery man holding flowers like they were something sacred. Perhaps it was the exhaustion in Daniel's eyes, the kind that only people carrying invisible burdens understand. Or maybe it was just fate. Alexander asked Daniel to wait for a moment while he looked at the card. The billionaire stared at the simple message written in delicate ink. For someone who deserves beauty. He let out a quiet breath. For years, Alexander had built companies, negotiated billion-dollar deals, and traveled the world. Yet every night he returned to empty hotel suites and silent penthouses. His parents had died when he was young. Relationships had come and gone, but none stayed. Success had filled his bank accounts but left his heart strangely hollow. Looking at the soaked delivery man standing awkwardly at the door, Alexander suddenly felt something unexpected, a strange curiosity. He asked Daniel if he would mind stepping inside for a moment while the situation was sorted out. Daniel hesitated. People like him didn't belong in places like this. But the rain was pouring harder outside, and the hallway felt colder by the minute. So he stepped inside. The suite was enormous, with glass walls revealing the glittering city below. Daniel stood carefully near the entrance, afraid he might accidentally ruin something expensive with his wet clothes. Alexander noticed this immediately. For the first time in years, he found himself observing someone without judgment or expectation. Daniel's worn shoes, his careful posture, the way he kept checking his phone, likely worried about someone waiting at home. Alexander asked what made him work so late in the rain. Daniel explained about Lily, his 6-year-old daughter. He spoke simply, without self-pity, describing how he balanced work and parenting, how Lily loved drawing flowers, and how she believed her father's job was the most beautiful one in the world. Something in Alexander's chest shifted. For a moment, the billionaire imagined what it must feel like to have someone waiting for you like that. Someone who believed in you. Someone who needed you. Daniel soon realized he had already taken too much of the stranger's time and apologized again for the mix-up. He said he would return the flowers to the shop and find the correct address. But Alexander stopped him. He told Daniel that mistakes didn't always need fixing. Sometimes they happened for a reason. Then, in a quiet and unexpected gesture, Alexander asked if he could buy the bouquet. Daniel was surprised but grateful. It meant he wouldn't have to return empty-handed to his boss. Alexander placed the flowers in a tall glass vase near the window. Against the dark city skyline, the white lilies seemed to glow softly. Daniel thanked him and prepared to leave. But before he stepped out, Alexander asked one more question. He asked if Daniel ever got tired. Daniel smiled in a way that was both strong and fragile. He said yes. But he also said that love made tiredness feel lighter. That answer stayed with Alexander long after the door closed. Over the next few weeks, something unusual happened. Alexander Reed began ordering flowers almost every evening. And every single delivery request asked specifically for Daniel Carter. At first, Daniel thought it was coincidence. But soon he realized the billionaire simply enjoyed their quiet conversations. Sometimes Daniel would bring different flowers and explain their meanings. Lily would even draw little pictures that Daniel occasionally carried in his bag. Alexander kept them all. Slowly, the billionaire's cold routine began to change. He started leaving the office earlier. He began noticing the small beauty in everyday life, the scent of roses, the way lilies opened under sunlight, the gentle pride in Daniel's voice when he talked about his daughter. Months passed. Then one afternoon, Daniel brought Lily with him to the hotel because her school had closed early. She was shy at first, hiding behind her father. But children have a way of seeing truth adults often miss. Within minutes, Lily was happily showing Alexander her flower drawings. Alexander had never laughed so freely in years. That night, as Daniel and Lily left the hotel, Alexander stood by the window watching them walk into the evening light. For the first time in his life, his enormous suite felt smaller than the warmth he had just witnessed. And that was when Alexander Reed made a decision that would surprise the entire city. He realized that the richest man in the room had never been him. It had always been the tired single father who carried love like a quiet superpower. Weeks later, headlines across the country exploded with shock. The billionaire Alexander Reed had married a humble flower delivery man named Daniel Carter. The world speculated endlessly. People whispered that it must be a publicity stunt or a strange business move. But they were wrong. Because what the world couldn't see was the quiet truth behind closed doors. Two lonely people had found something priceless in each other. A home, a family, and a love that grew from the most unexpected mistake. Before we reach the end of this story, tell me something in the comments. Do you believe life-changing moments often come from simple accidents? Years later, visitors to the Reed Foundation headquarters would often notice a large painting hanging in the main hall. It showed a bicycle leaning against a rainy street, with a bouquet of white lilies resting in the basket. Beneath the painting was a small plaque that read, "The wrong door sometimes leads you to the right life." Daniel continued delivering flowers for a long time, even after wealth entered his life. He said it reminded him where everything began. Alexander, meanwhile, spent much of his fortune creating charities for single parents and struggling families. And Lily. She grew up surrounded by love, still drawing flowers, still believing her father had the most beautiful job in the world. If this story touched your heart and reminded you that kindness and second chances can change lives, please take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe for more stories that celebrate the power of humanity. Because sometimes, the greatest love stories begin with a simple mistake and a bouquet delivered to the wrong door. Cherry Blossom.